What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Nvidia stock, ticker symbol NVDA, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Tuesday, April 9th. Alright guys, Nvidia stock here today down $8.75 a share. That's minus 0.99% after a big fade off the open. A little bit of a pre-market pump and then fade. We are holding steady in after hours, up a little bit, but it's early in the after hours, so that will likely change into the close of after hours tonight. Either way, whether it stays flat, up, or down, please take it with a grain of salt, because volume is likely to be very low. Let's do it, guys. Let's take a look at this name and try to pull out as much bias as we possibly can using a variety of sources. Everything the market will give us: the volume profile, the psychological levels, the options bias, and the expected move. Let's start here on the 5-minute chart by doing a quick volume profile analysis here. By the way, remember guys, Nvidia gets posted every single weekday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, so if you have not done so already, subscribe to the channel. Let's take a look here. The primary moves that I want to look at here today are going to be that big fade off the open, of course, and then a little bit of that recovery, and as well as this kind of mid to late morning fade, and then sort of a bounce move that we saw. I want to see what the volume profile looked like in both of those to see if it really supported the movement that we actually got in the price action, right? I think of these two things as kind of separate entities that really do not necessarily need to match each other. Now, off the open, that initial candle, we always expect that to be a high volume bar, right? So that's not out of context at all. That second bar, we saw slightly higher volume, but on the, I'll call it the bottoming bar, but really it's not quite that, but that green bar, the third bar of the day, that actually matched the volume of that bigger selling bar, right? So to me, if this third bar was red, I'd be looking at this and saying, okay, listen, there's a little bit of bearish bias in the volume profile. That's pretty obvious off the open, but we got it breaking up with that green bar, and then as the stock kind of consolidated sideways and began that move back upside, that little bit of a bounce that we saw, we returned to a very normal profile with that fade off the open. So listen, yes, there was a big red move off the open, but, you know, bears, there's not a lot of bias in the chain. When we peel back that onion, I'm sorry, in the profile, when we peel back that onion, there was really not a lot there. Now, in this mid to late morning move, again, we saw that fade and then kind of half recovery there. So bears, what you guys would be looking for is a really obvious, undeniable bearish bias in this downside move with no bullish bias on the bounce. Bulls, you'd be looking for the opposite of that. No bias on the move down, an obvious bullish bias on the bounce. And what do we see here? We see one of those pyramid kind of layouts that we get in the profile a lot that, to me, signals a cancel out. Okay, there's nothing there. It's equal on both sides, even given the fact that the move itself wasn't equal in price action movement, right? We saw kind of a bigger sell-off than we saw in the recovery, yet the profile is very even. Yes, there's one outlying candle, but it was the bottoming bar. Now let's move on to the 30-minute and take a look at the self-fulfilling prophecy psychological levels that I'm going to be paying close attention to here come tomorrow. If you guys recall from the weekend's video, Friday, we had just barely reclaimed that 50 period here on the 30-minute chart heading into the close, and it was a first day reclaim. I wanted to see some confirmation here today from a bullish perspective. We saw a sloppy test, sloppy bounce, and a prompt fade down beneath. We gave it back up. Okay, that's why I'm always so, beating the table that these first day little claims late in the day, they're very hard to sit here and say that that's a definitive move, and we easily gave that up here today. But bulls, keep in mind, we're less than 6 points away from a reclaim of that 50 period. So, bears, don't start yelling and shouting just yet. This is kind of the equivalent for you guys as what the bulls saw last Friday. It's a first day break. Okay, this is anybody's ball game, at least here on the 30-minute. Bears, you guys just want to see a quick rejection hard on as much volume as possible off of that 30-minute as quickly as possible come tomorrow's open. All right, ideally spending pretty much all day rejecting that level, like beneath that level, with 1 or 2 or 3 hard rejections off of the level on big volume. Bulls, high volume reclaim, right? Like we always talk about, ideally I'd like to see confirmation, so a lower volume test. and then boom, high volume confirmation heading up toward that 200 period. What's the best case scenario if you're a bull? A reclaim of both the 50 and the 200 on the 30-minute tomorrow. That's best case scenario. In order to make that happen, understand that is approximately a 2% move to test that 200. So you might need 2.25%, 2.5% to reclaim both of those tomorrow. Certainly not out of Nvidia's wheelhouse, so paying attention there. Now, let's take a look at the 4-hour chart here. Okay, you can see that we're still right in the middle of this channel between the 200 and the 50. But again, guys, like last weekend, we have more immediate levels to be concerned with. Notice how this 900 is right ahead of that 50 period on the 4-hour. That 850 is right ahead of that 200 period on the 4-hour. So listen, I'm paying attention to those if it comes to it. But the more immediate concern is that channel being formed by those psychological and now technical, or technical and now psychological, depending on which one you're looking at, levels here on the daily. 850 to 9 is the most obvious channel on this stock today, heading into tomorrow. This here is the story. Bulls, if we go down and test 850, which is not a tremendous move away, we're looking at approximately a 2.4% downside move, we're going to want to see that hold. Because bears, what's your guys' best case scenario? A crack downside of 850. And bulls, understand that a crack downside of 850, a lot of bears are looking at this and thinking it's game over. Oh, now we're heading down to the 50 period, or the 50 day, I suppose, which is also near 800. Okay, we were just talking about 900. I think that would get the bears very excited. Bulls, we don't want to see a crack downside of 850, whereas bears, you guys certainly don't want to see a 3.5% upside move cracking back above the psychological number of 900, which also happens to be the upside level of this current channel between 850 and 9. And by the way, guys, a break downside below 850 and a break upside above 850 and a hold. Those two words, and hold, are the difference maker, right? You have to see a hold. A break for 6 minutes is meaningless. We're talking about the macro view here on the daily. A break and hold above or below those levels, right? Above 9, below 850, that sets this thing up for potentially a bigger move in that same direction if it can use that as a kind of trampoline in the case of 9, or ceiling rejection point in the case of 850. Now, implied volatility here, guys, still falling. Again, remember, the lower that goes, the more IV crush you will face if you own purchased contracts. And also, the lower that goes, the more favorable conditions become for new options buyers to come in and buy new contracts. Let's take a look here at the bias out of the chain. 700,000 total contracts traded here today. 421,000 of those were calls. 279,000 were puts. So we are seeing a call side bias here on Nvidia today. The short-term speculators, that 0 to 20 delta range, those are those out-of-the-money gambly style calls and puts. 162,000 calls and 126,000 puts. Listen, Nvidia is a great stock. I love this company, especially when we're talking mid and long term. And don't get me wrong, it offers intraday setups. But Nvidia is not a stock that I'm trading intraday every day. But not by any means. There has to be a very specific setup in this name for me to trade it with edge. If you guys want to get alerted to the in-play stocks, these are the stocks that are moving, attracting the emotional, beatable human traders every single day. I'm sending out those in-play alerts to members. Take a look at that link in the pinned comment. It's a very small change that's likely to make a tremendous difference in your trading. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.